Please join in a moment of centering silence so we can be fully present with each other this morning. And now let's get musically present with each other by turning to the words for our ingathering hymn, which you'll find inside your order of service. And speaking of being connected, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday here at First Unitarian Society, where independent thinkers gather in a safe, nurturing environment to explore issues of social, spiritual, and ethical significance so we can do good things in this world. I'm Steve Goldberg, a proud, good-looking member of this congregation, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to any guests, visitors, or newcomers. If this is your first time at First Unitarian Society, I know that you'll find it's a special place. And if you'd like to learn more about our special buildings, we'll be conducting a guided tour after today's service. Just gather over here by the windows and we'll take care of you. And speaking of taking care of each other, take a moment now to silence those pesky electronic devices that you just will not need during the service. And while you're doing that, if you are accompanied by a youngster today and you think that young person would prefer to enjoy the service from a more private space, we offer a couple options, including our child haven back there in the corner of the auditorium, and some comfortable seating just outside the doorway in the commons from which you and your youngster can see and hear the service. A future minister, I'm sure. So, speaking of the service, I'd like you to know who's helping the service run smoothly. We call them our volunteers. They're wonderful folks. I'm going to read their names so that you can express thanks and appreciation to them a little bit later. Operating the sound system, David Bryles. Thank you, David. Thanks to Tom Boykoff for being our lay minister this morning. Our greeter was Mary Elizabeth Kunkel upstairs. Our ushers today include Liza Monroe, Dick Goldberg, and Ann Ostrom. The all-important hospitality and coffee are hosted by Jean Hills after the service, so be patient. And we thank John Tews for donating the flowers that you see behind me up here. And our tour guide after the service will be John Powell. Just a couple announcements. That wasn't one of them. Our annual FUS Passover Seder will be held Friday evening, April 22nd. It's a Unitarian Universalist adaptation of the traditional Passover Seder, and it includes, of course, the all-important, delicious, and tasty and mouth-watering kosher dinner. It's a family-friendly event. Features all kinds of good food and the Seder service itself. So you can sign up at the table in the Commons after the service, and we ask that if you're going to attend, since we have to plan for the number of people who will be there, that you sign up no later than a week from tomorrow, Monday, April 18. And speaking of food, FUS, as you might know, has a shelter meals team, and that team is asking for people to help prepare 90 servings of food, including vegetables and dessert, for the upcoming men's shelter meal at Grace Episcopal Church. That shelter meal will be Saturday evening, April 16 at 8 o'clock. So to sign up, you can email, and if you want to get this down, you can start writing right now. That email address is fussheltermeals, again, fussheltermeals, easy to remember, at gmail.com. One more time, fussheltermeals at gmail.com, so that you can sign up and help with this wonderful project. And speaking of wonderful projects, Cabaret is going to be held here Friday evening, May 20th. Friday evening, May 20th. So who can tell me how many days from now Friday, May 20th is? 40, that's right. You win the prize. That's 40 days and 40 nights until a party of biblical proportions as we celebrate the theme of an evening in Italy. So Cabaret that evening is going to transform this entire facility into an Italian party venue. Italian food, Italian music, Unitarian auction items, and a wonderful opportunity to raise money for that organization we love so well, known as First Unitarian Society. We still have time, you have time, to submit the item that you would like to donate to this all-important fundraising auction. Cabaret over the years has become one of the most enjoyable and entertaining events in the FUS social calendar. So if you've never attended, come see why it is considered such a special evening. And you can purchase your tickets for Cabaret right after the service out in the Commons. Or you can wait until the last minute and pay a little bit more at the door. That's up to you. But I know that this will be a very wonderful Italian theme, and some of you are probably wondering, Steve, how Italian is Cabaret going to be? Well, let me tell you. When you come to Cabaret, I just know you will say, that's Italian. With the food and the song lasting all the night long, that's Italian. We'll have an auction there, bargains beyond compare, that's Italian. So please come to Cabaret, get your ticket today, it's Italian. Well, that ends the announcements for today. So please, sit back or lean forward to enjoy this morning's service. I know it will touch your heart, stir your spirit, and trigger one or two new thoughts. We're glad you're here. See you at Cabaret in 40 days.
of the late, great George Carlin. You probably noticed elsewhere that I use the word fat. I use that word because that's what fat people are. They're fat. They're not large, they're not stout, chunky, hefty, or plump. They're not big-boned. Dinosaurs are big-boned. These people are not necessarily obese either. Obese is a medical term, and a particularly meaningless one at that. They're not overweight. Overweight implies that there is some correct weight. There's no correct weight. Heavy is also a misleading term. An aircraft carrier is heavy. It's not fat. Only fat people are fat, and that's what fat people are. They're fat. I offer no apology for this. It's not intended as a criticism or an insult. It's simply descriptive language. And if you put a judgment on that description, well, that says more about you than the people that you're describing. Euphemisms, I don't like euphemisms. Euphemisms are a form of lying. Fat people aren't gravitationally disadvantaged. They're fat. And I, for one, prefer to see people how they are. So if you would all see the rising or see the lighting of the chalice, if you would rise in body or spirit. Your words will be found in your order of service. We light this chalice for all who are here and all who are not, for all who have ever walked through our doors, for those who may yet find this spiritual home, and for those we can't even yet imagine. For each of us and for us all, may this flame burn bright and warm. And now if you'll turn to each other and exchange friendly greetings. Could you hear me back? And if there are any young ones who would like to come up today and hear a story, we have a pretty cool story. Come on.
I have a peace shirt under my dress.
You do have a peace shirt under your dress. That's awesome. Come on and sit down. You guys are Spider-Man up here. It's true. And you have a purse? You all have wonderful, awesome things today. So glad you're here. Hi. All right, well, today's story is called It's Okay to Be Different, and the author is named Todd Parr. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be missing a tooth, or 2, or 3. He's missing 4. I guess that's okay too. It's okay to need some help, and it's okay to have a different nose. That's good for elephants, huh? Yeah. It's okay to be a different color, and it's okay to have no hair. Has anyone seen a rainbow zebra before? No? Well, now you have. Oh, it's fake. Maybe. It's okay to have big ears. And it's okay to have wheels. It's okay to be small, medium, large, or extra large. It's okay to wear glasses. And it's okay to talk about your feelings. It's okay to eat macaroni and cheese in the bathtub. I'm going to try that.
I love macaroni.
And it's okay to say no to bad things. It's okay to come from a different place. What's he saying?
What?
I think that's what that says. And it's okay to be embarrassed.
Toilet paper.
It's okay to come in last. And it's okay to dance by yourself. I'm really glad I do that all the time.
I see orchids.
Yeah. It's okay to have a pet worm. And it's okay to be proud of yourself. It's okay to have different moms, and it's okay to have different dads. It's pretty much okay to have any kind of family, right? And it's okay to be adopted. It's okay to have an invisible friend. And it's okay to do something nice for someone else. It's okay to lose your mittens. And it's okay to get mad. It's okay to do something nice for yourself. And it's okay to help a squirrel collect nuts. It's okay to have different kinds of friends. And it's okay to make a wish. It's okay to be different. You are special and important just being who you are. And that's a message that says, love Todd, who's the author of this book. I hope that you embrace all of the ways you are special and different as you go to your classes, and we're going to sing a song you might know. Sing it with us on the way out. It's number 118, This Little Light of Mine.
Thank
feeling it. Our first reading today comes from a rant taken off Facebook, shared with permission. Dear men in bars in California, this may come as a shock to you, but I know I'm fat. I do, in fact, have mirrors hanging in my home, and despite all the rhetoric that tells me I shouldn't enjoy looking at them, I actually think that I'm attractive. I appreciate that you also think that I'm attractive, but it isn't necessary to tell me that you do so in spite of the fact that I'm a big girl, or even because of it. You don't get extra points for offering to sleep with me despite my figure. And I don't care if you've never been with a big girl before. It's not that different, and it's not gonna happen. Hey guys, here's a hint. You might think you're doing me a favor by finding a fat girl hot, but I have news for you. You are not a unicorn. You are not a snowflake. You are not that rare guy that looks at me and gets tingly feelings in his no-no bits. Our culture insists that I am not beautiful, but our culture is wrong. So what you're feeling is reality, pushing against this false sense of beauty our plastic-obsessed society enforces on you. And guess what? If it's happening to you, it's happening to a bunch of other guys too. So I am sorry. I really am sorry that our society's unrealistic beauty standards are impacting both of us tonight. But right now, I'm here to have a drink with my friends and butcher some Adele songs in the karaoke machine. So I can suggest some books for you to read. I can suggest some websites for you to peruse. But I really don't want to help you work out your conflicted attraction to me. I don't want to have a discussion about why you're telling me about it in the first place is totally inappropriate, and I'm certainly not going to participate in some fetishized experience for you. So can I get back to having fun now? Because honestly, dude, you're not even my best option in this place. Even if you weren't standing in a crowded room trying to talk to me about my weight. And our second reading comes from the fat activist Marilyn Wan. On October 26, 1993, I had a really bad day. First, the guy I was dating said he was embarrassed to introduce me to his friends because I was fat. Ouch. Then Blue Cross of California decided not to give me health insurance because of my weight. Double ouch. I was stunned, hurt, and outraged. Now, if you've ever been stunned and hurt and outraged, you know it is hard to feel all of those things at once. Pretty soon, you have to pick one feeling. Stunned and hurt are great emotions, but they're not super useful. So I chose outraged. All my life, I've done everything I could to make sure people accepted me, maybe even liked me despite my fat. I was a good student, a trustworthy friend, an obedient child. I didn't speak unless I was sure I had something interesting or amusing to say. I went out of my way to be considerate, supportive, a good listener. But if no one wanted to hang out, I was quite content with my own company. As a fat teenager, I never expected to wear trendy clothing or get invited to the prom. I had friends, but I never felt part of the crowd. Instead, I focused on the areas where I could succeed. All of the independence and communication skills that I developed as a fat child started to pay off in unexpected ways. I loved to write, so I became editor of my high school newspaper. I was good at school, so I earned 2 degrees from Stanford. I wasn't afraid of being alone, so I traveled all over Europe and Russia by myself, having adventures. In fact, I really wasn't afraid of much, since I figured the worst thing had already happened to me. I was fat. In that fearless mode, I learned how to fly an airplane. In college, I threw brilliant parties and developed a wonderful circle of friends. Over the years, I learned to trust that my personality and charm would attract men, but some part of me always discounted that attention. Some part of me was afraid that if I stopped trying, I wouldn't count for anything. After all, I was fat. Then, on October 26th, 1993, my worst fears came true. None of it mattered. The accomplishments, the personality, all the extra effort, being fat outweighed everything else about me. I am 5'4" tall, and I weigh 270 pounds. My blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugars, the 3 best health indicators, are all normal. I have no history of serious illness. I don't smoke. I exercise and eat my vegetables. I brush my teeth and pay my taxes and wear my seatbelt. Yet, from my most personal moments with that guy to my official business with the insurance company, I was shut out because of a number on a scale. So I sat there on that really bad day deciding between stunned and hurt and outraged, and I thought about what my date had said. I thought about what Blue Cross had said, and I realized that I absolutely did not agree with them. Fat is not a death sentence. It's just a fact. I decided that if a guy couldn't accept my weight, he didn't get to date me. I decided that Blue Cross's label of morbid obesity wasn't a diagnosis, it was a discrimination. I decided I had to speak up about the kind of mistreatment I experienced on that really bad day. Staying silent would mean I agreed to be mistreated. I agreed to being banished from life and from love. And I most certainly did not agree to that. Thank you, choir. I've been in Madison about 8.5 months now. I'm starting to learn the place. I can get a lot of places without GPS. I have my favorite spots. But I think you really know that you've integrated into a place when you can understand its humor. So I'm gonna tell you a couple of stories, and I'm gonna judge by your reaction if they're funny or not. It's the Deep South. After a hurricane, 2 AmeriCorps workers decide to go to a bar after a long day's work. They don't know this because it's not posted anywhere because it's illegal, but it's an all-white bar. The locals know this, so they kind of look funny when the AmeriCorps workers walk in because one of them is a person of color. The person of color has to eventually go to the bathroom. And when she goes in and shuts the door, somebody takes a rope and ties it to the door handle, and then they tie the other end of the rope to a bar stool and sit on it, so that when she tries to open the door and come out, people are laughing and she's stuck in there and they're yelling, jeering at her. This is not funny. I can tell by your reactions that this is not funny. Okay, all right, let me try again. You know, in the grocery stores, they have those little displays that jut out from the aisles of food, and then on those displays are those little hooks where you can hang price tags and merchandise. So one time there was a person in a wheelchair turning the corner, and one of these display hooks caught in the spokes of their wheelchair. So when they try to move forward, they're kind of dragging the sign with them or the display with them, and there's merchandise falling everywhere. And then they do one big push and they're kind of half hanging out of their chair, just laying. This isn't funny either. This is also not funny. Okay. I guess I'm a little bit confused because the other day I was on campus and I saw some kids there laughing uproariously at this video of a fat man stuck in a bathtub. They were calling their friends over and making a big public display of watching it. So let me get this straight. Even in liberal, progressive Madison, Wisconsin, it's not funny to be stuck somewhere because of the color of your body, and it is not funny to be stuck somewhere because of the ability of your body. But it is hilarious to be stuck somewhere because of the size of your body. And you might say, well, those were kids, and kids are mean. And it's true, sometimes kids can be mean, but I know those kids, and I know that campus, and I would bet you dollars to donuts, phrasing intended, that those kids would have had a very different reaction if they were shown a video of watching a person of color trapped in a bathroom or someone in a wheelchair unable to move down an aisle. Our society has far and wide, our society has named the moral inferiority, by and large, of discriminating against bodies because of their color, because of their gender, and because of their ability. I am not saying we are perfect at always seeing these discriminations. I am not saying we are perfect at dealing with them. I'm not even saying we're good at it. But publicly, we have named in most areas that it is not okay to discriminate against the color, the gender, or the ability of somebody's body. And yet, it is still okay to publicly shame fat people. You might say, yeah, but, or actually you might not, because you all are pretty great. But an argument that I have heard against this is, well, yeah, but women, people of color, folks with disabilities, they can't help their situation. Fat people can always just lose weight. There are at least three at least 3 really wrong things with this statement. The first one is saying that if women or people of color or people with disabilities suddenly had the power to choose to be able-bodied white men, they all would, because that is the right kind of body. I do not need to get into with a group as emotionally and intellectually intelligent as you why that statement is false and wrong. The second thing that's wrong with that argument is that it puts a whole lot of agency on fat folks that I just don't think that they have. The National Institute of Health will tell you that 90% of all diets fail. 90% of all diets fail. And I mean, that's because fat people are lazy, right? So there was this woman, a researcher in Columbia University, who was a nutritionist, who understood deeply the effects of food on the body. She also understood the scientific method, and she knew this statistic that 90% of all diets fail. The thing about her is she was also a fat woman. And she knew that if all it took to get rid of the hatred, discrimination, and at best, invisibility that fat people face, if all it took was a simple choice between celery or ice cream most days, that is a good and easy sacrifice to make. She knew this. And yet, 90% of all diets fail. So she underwent a study to figure out, why is it that we are driven to eat what we're driven to eat? Why is it that we're driven to weigh what we're driven to weigh? And what she found out was that everybody has a set weight that it's comfortable at. And this set weight it's implemented in your hippocampus at childhood. So while you're growing up, your body learns an amount of fat that it's comfortable with. And if you go below this amount of fat by 15 to 30 pounds, no matter how much you eat, no matter what you eat, no matter what you weigh, if your body is below this set point, you'll feel like you're starving. You can be chubby and feel like you're starving. And it's interesting that this is set in childhood, because another thing that she learned is obesity is very clearly linked to poverty. There are some areas where people don't have access to good and healthy food. And even in areas where people do have access to good and healthy food, it's still more expensive than the dollar menu at McDonald's. And so in childhood, if your body gets used to this higher fat content set weight, that's going to set in your hippocampus. And even as an adult, you might feel like you're starving, even if you're at a healthy weight. This also gets into your genetics. And like the cycles of poverty, you pass on cycles of obesity to your kids. It was a really interesting study. I don't have evidence that would pass the scientific method for my next point, but I can tell you from lived experience that it's true. A fat person publicly exercising is like walking out into a paintball field with no armor and no gun yourself. People are going to throw things at you that mark you and that sting. When I moved to Berkeley, California, I was instantly in love with the topography. I'm a Midwestern girl. I had never seen such hills. There were hills that had poles implanted in the ground along the sidewalk because you needed to use them to pull yourself up. There were places where you could reach out and touch the sidewalk in front of you where your feet were supposed to be in a couple of steps. When you got to the top of these hills, though, You were rewarded with this rush of endorphins and this gorgeous, gorgeous view. I got hooked. I wanted to do it all of the time. But I am a Midwestern girl. I was not used to those hills. So I took my free student gym pass. I went to the UC Berkeley gym, and I put the treadmill on the highest incline possible, and I climbed. I was gonna get ready so I could climb up to the tallest hill that I possibly could and feel that rush of endorphins. I had no goals of losing weight. I wanted to climb. And I soon learned that being at a gym and being a fat person, imagine being stuck. Imagine being stuck on a hamster wheel where folks could look at your body and come up and tell you all of the ways that you are different and all of the ways that you should change and not being able to go anywhere. I'm so proud of you. You can do it. Keep going. If you need any help on your weight loss journey, I will be here for you. This is inspiring. Oh, but please note, I'm not hitting on you. I don't date fat women. That's really not going to help, that incline work, because you're just going to add muscles to your legs. You're not going to lose much weight. You should try interval training. But it was when I spent time in the locker room and people decided to consistently give me weight loss advice while looking at my body in the shower that I decided I needed to stop going to the gym. If you need any empirical evidence for this, go home and see the YouTube channel Fat People Running on Treadmills. They're all videos of folks surreptitiously taken video of while they're exercising and posted for public shaming. So if the argument that fat people could just choose to lose weight is true, that's giving them a lot of agency. That's saying that they can overcome nature, sometimes income inequality, and public shaming in order to just lose weight. And here's the thing, here's the third thing, and the most damning thing, the most damaging thing that supposition that fat people can just lose weight says. It says that they should want to. It says that they should understand that their body is inferior. It says that they should feel shame about the vessel through which they get to experience their humanity. So if a fat woman can navigate tiny outdoor patio chairs at cafes and airplane seats and the forest of polyester that is the plus-size section in most department stores, if she can navigate all of that and still believe that she deserves love and respect, society doesn't disagree with her. It simply assumes she couldn't exist. Some of you might be thinking, yeah, okay, it's great to have a positive self-image, but isn't being fat really bad for you? Isn't it bad for your health? Thank you for bringing that up. Obesity is linked to higher rates of breast cancer. Obesity is linked to higher rates of heart disease. Obesity is linked to higher rates of hypertension and diabetes. The New England Journal of Medicine saw that more fat women died of breast cancer than thin women. But they also noticed that they got the cancer at the same rates. There wasn't a higher instance of breast cancer in fat women, but they just died from it more often. So the New England Journal of Medicine was really interested to figure out what the effect of fat was on cancer cells. How did it speed up this process? And what they actually found out was if you controlled for early detection, the rate of death in fat women was not more than the rate of death in thin women. But it was just that fat women were less likely to have health insurance and were less likely to go to the doctor. Before the Affordable Care Act, it was legal to deny people health insurance based on their weight. We also know that obesity has higher instances in poverty, that poverty is linked to obesity, and we know that poor people don't have as much health insurance. So fat people, are not going to the doctor as much. But what the New England Journal of Medicine also found was that even fat people in general, fat women especially, that had health insurance were not going to the doctor as often as thin people. Marilyn Wan, who was the author of our beginning reading, she writes and creates and curates this zine. A zine is an indie magazine for people who are cooler than me. She curates this zine called Fatso, or if you put in the punctuation, fat, exclamation mark, so, question mark. And in it, she collects stories of people living every day in fat bodies. I'd like to share 2 stories from the Going to the Doctor chapter or zine. There was a woman named Betty. Betty had a persistent cough. Betty went to 4 different doctors. The first 2 didn't touch her. The 3rd doctor examined her and told her that her persistent cough was due to the fact that she was fat. Of course you can't breathe very well. How can you walk around in that body? The 4th doctor did a chest X-ray and diagnosed her lung tumor. There was another woman named Candace. Now Candace had what we would call the ideal body. She was a stunt double. She was fit. She was thin. She was toned. And she was tired. She kept getting more and more tired. They screened her for cancer. Nothing. She kept going back to the doctor, and they did all of these tests, and they eventually just said, "You're working too much. There's nothing physically wrong with you." It took her going into a diabetic coma for them to diagnose that she had type 2 adult onset diabetes, because thin people don't have that, right? The doctors never thought to check for it. The stigma of fat and health is bad for everybody. But still, fat people are less healthy, right? What about the whole heart disease thing? We all know that many, many more fat people die of heart attacks. It's actually true. More fat people die of heart attacks. And what the New England Journal of Medicine found, though, was in many of these studies, there was a control factor, like controlling for who actually went to go see the doctor, that was not put in place. And had that control factor been put in place, many of these studies would have been scientifically irrelevant, meaning they needed to have another kind of control in order for them to actually be on par with something like the New England Journal of Medicine. So these 2 thin white men oversaw the re-implementation of many of these studies. And they wrote these books, Obesity Myth and Big Fat Lies, about what they found when they were watching these studies being implemented again. What they found was in the original studies, when people were talking about heart attacks, they were not controlling for people that were taking ephedrine drugs. In the 90s, when these studies were being done, the market was filled with things like fen-phen and redox, things that led to death 1 in 30 times when taken regularly, things that were marketed specifically to fat people, things that fat people would take regardless of how unhealthy it was, because they just couldn't bear to live in a society, in this society, in a fat body and being treated how they were. What the study also didn't control for was yo-yo dieting. If you lose a significant amount of weight quickly, it deteriorates your muscles. Your heart is a muscle. We all know Mama Cass, right? From the Mamas and the Papas. Mama Cass was a 300-pound woman. And after she died, once the vicious rumor that she died choking on a ham sandwich subsided, we learned that Mama Cass died of a heart attack. Of course she did. She's a fat girl. Mama Cass toured for almost a decade, keeping up a rigorous schedule, being on stage every night. And she was fine. But the 4 months before she died, she lost 80 pounds. These people, they weren't dying because they were fat. They were dying to be thin. It turns out there is no correlation between plaque in your arteries that they used to call fat and fat on your body. There's no correlation between it. And if you controlled in those studies for people taking ephedrine drugs and people that had had massive amounts of weight loss or weight gain in a short period of time, it turns out there wasn't a higher correlation of heart attack and death in fat people. What about hypertension? The studies on hypertension haven't really been redone all that well or all that recently, but the New England Journal of Medicine did note something interesting. There was a study done in African Americans that said African Americans have a 20% higher rate of hypertension than white folks. And there was a study done that directly correlated that increased rate of hypertension with feeling discriminated against. They said if the person that they were studying said they consistently felt discriminated against, then that person had a 20% higher rate of hypertension. Guess what the rate is in fat folks of higher hypertension than thin folks? It's 20%. There aren't scientific links to that. It's an interesting statistic. And diabetes. Diabetes is the disease, the one disease that is actually linked to obesity. If you are fat, you are more likely to have type 2 adult onset diabetes. And here's the thing. When people were trying to control that diabetes without medication, the thing that made them successful was not was not weight loss. It was a change in diet and exercise. In fact, in every study that we now have available to us, weight itself is much less relevant than the activity level and diet of a person. And yes, the activity level and the diet of a person is linked to their weight, but there are sedentary thin people who are not healthy. And there are fat people who do yoga and who run marathons and who are fine. There is no way to look at a body and tell how healthy it is. There's no way to look at a body and tell how healthy it is. So why do we have this story out there that fat is a death sentence? Why don't we concentrate more on getting people to be active and to eat well and to think less about the size of their body and more about the health of their body? Why is it that the first lady of this country travels around telling school children that my body is an epidemic? Wouldn't it be a better story to tell them they should celebrate the bodies that they're in by moving them? Wouldn't it be a better story to tell them that they should celebrate the gifts of the earth by eating natural, good, healthy foods? Why isn't this the story? Former Surgeon General L. Everett Koop, once he retired, he had a big name. He was the former Surgeon General, and he had some time on his hands, and he initiated a lot of these studies. He initiated a lot of these studies that said that fat is death. He initiated these studies that said we should focus on weight, even though what the studies really said is that we should focus on activity and nutrition. He turned it into weight. Do you know who funded these studies? Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig. They each paid $2 million, a not insignificant portion of which went to him himself. There is a $40 billion industry that thrives on our self-hatred. That $40 billion industry is just the diet and weight loss industry. That's not the fashion industry or the magazine industry or any other industry that tells you that you should be different and then sells you things to make you different. What would it be like? What a revolutionary act of resistance and liberation would it be if we all just decided that we were going to love our bodies? What would it be like if we decided we were going to fall head over heels in love with these things that carry us around and allow us the miracle of human existence, of experiencing human life? What would it be like if we fell head over heels, desperately, uncontrollably in love with ourselves and our bodies, our fat, skinny, tall, short, hairy, wrinkly, veiny bodies? After all, these are the bits of stardust that we borrowed from the universe that allow us to live and breathe every day. Shouldn't we acknowledge that all of them, every single one of them, has worth, deserves dignity and compassion in all of its forms and imperfections? Heck, who's to say what an imperfection is? What if we just soaked our living beings with love and goodness? Wouldn't it help us live out more love and compassion in our daily lives? Wouldn't it help us see the world not through a mirror of what we would like to be or what we're glad we're not, but through a wonderful example of the spectrum of human diversity and possibility? And then if we did that, if we soaked our bodies, our very selves, with love and acceptance, maybe, just maybe, when they went back to the earth, they would add a little bit more love to the cycle. Isn't that one of the main reasons we're here? To try to figure out how to give more love to the cycles of life? It turns out loving yourself is one of the most revolutionary, amazing, fight the power kind of ways that you could possibly do that. It's not easy. It's not simple. But man, it feels good. Blessed be. Amen. Our offering today goes to the Wisconsin Council on Children and Families, which works nonstop to create nurturing, just, and compassionate community for every Wisconsin child. Let's hope that they're teaching them to love themselves and their bodies. Our offering will now be taken. Most weeks there's a book out in the Commons with the cares of the congregation sign. It's an opportunity to let this community share our joys and our sorrows. This week, Jody Stryker Bremer is thinking about her friend Louise, who went from feeling perfectly healthy to a diagnosis of stage 4 cancer in a couple weeks' time. We wish her well as she starts chemo and transitions in this new phase of her life. Keep her in your thoughts. And we also hold Joe Murphy in our hearts, who is recovering from a recent surgery. All is going well, and we send prayers that he recovers and that it continues to be smooth and uneventful. If you will now join me one last time in body and or spirit and song, we will sing our closing hymn, number 1014, Standing on the Side of Love. Folks, I know that I just said a whole bunch of stuff that was probably counter to a lot of things that you have heard, and I know we are an empirical community, so if you need dates or names of studies done, or if you just have more questions and things going on in your head, I will be out in the commons. And until then, I would like to invoke the spirit of the bowling ball. A bowling ball is purposeful. It is shapely. It is unabashed about proclaiming its weight. And if anyone gets in its way, it knocks those pinheads down. Go through your life with the purpose of a bowling ball. Move swiftly, sure of your mass. Go in peace, return in love, and please be seated for the postlude.